morning. Welcome back along the Causeway Coast as usual, and I'm sure a lot of you will recognise exactly where I am. I live in a little spot called the Herringpond, and I'm sure, given the fact that it's going to be a lovely crisp morning, I'm going to be joined in here by a bunch of crazy open water dippers. It's actually, when I was driving over, I thought to myself, oh, it's not going to be much cop because the waves aren't going to be that great, but actually they don't seem to be too bad here. And what can sometimes happen here is, if the waves are too strong, below me here can form quite a lot of foam and crud, but there's not too much of it, which sort of gives us a couple of opportunities. Now we're about half an hour away from sunrise. There's actually also a few more clouds in the sky than I thought there was going to be. I thought it was going to be completely sort of crystal clear. Now there's not that many. I don't think the sky is going to play a massive role in any of the images this morning, and I certainly won't get the conditions that I got about a month and a half ago here. I'll throw up a couple of those images at the end of the vlog. So anyway, trying to make these daily vlogs not too long, so let's get cracking. Just setting up my first shot here. Very simple, no filters on at the moment. The ambient light is low enough that sort of f11 I'm getting a sort of 1.5 second exposure, which is just giving me a little bit of movement in those waves. Always kind of had an issue with this sort of setup here, and I was looking back through some of my older images, and I realized that there's a what sometimes bothers me is, amongst all of this natural rock, there's obviously a bit of a platform. You can probably just see it behind me there, which in some conditions, some softer light, it sometimes works, but quite often, because it's so much brighter, you end up doing something with that in post. And certainly what I have at the moment on the back of the camera in the horizontal viewpoint is that is quite prominent. Now what I think I might be able to do is just lower myself a little bit, maybe shuffle myself to the left and right, and just grab another image without that man-made platform in it. So we'll give that a crack. So no doubt about it, the bottom of the frame is certainly what's drawing my eye. These rocks, especially the sort of weathered ones with some of the lichen on them, are really taking on some of that pre-dawn glow. Even though we don't have a huge amount of clouds, in fact no clouds directly above us, still taking on some glow. I've come to the conclusion that I'm not sure you can have a composition in here without those steps in it. I think you can get rid of the flat area of the man-made bit. Now, not to say you can't get a composition, but I'm just struggling to find something in this sort of this area where I can sort of utilize it without having even the steps in. To kind of help things along, I sometimes wait until there's a little bit of a sort of wave, just sort of washing sort of gently over the top of those, the man-made bit, which might help as well. Now, you see some people now wandering out. I don't think they're going swimming though. The other thing that we have a problem with here is those steps blend in. From experience, those steps blend in with the rocks behind them. Now what you normally want to do is wait for the waves to kind of lap up behind that, and it gives a little bit of separation. I don't think the waves are going to be strong enough today. You might get the odd one to give us too much separation, so that's something I'm going to have to be mindful of. So, but the foreground rocks here are just beautiful, and there's part of me that's even tempted to kind of maybe come up with some little more intimate scenes just with those rocks in some of that pre-dawn glow, or at the very least completely remove the sky, because it has got some reasonable nice pinkish purples in it. But actually, come to think of it, now over to the left hand side, if I push myself more to the right, I might be able to include more of the left hand side of the frame, and there actually does look to be some nice clouds in there, so maybe let's do that. actually changed my position. I'm now pointing away from the steps, mostly because those two guys actually were going in. I thought I'd save their dignity. Fair play to them, mind you. But yeah, I just sort of changed my tack a little bit. I've just noticed, because we have some gorgeous, really thick clouds taking on the light over there, they're reflecting down now, and the rocks that are getting washed over by the waves are taking on some of that early morning sort of reflected light. Now, the problem at the moment is I have a polarizer and a 4-stop on. Probably need actually about a 2-stop, because the 4-stop's giving me about 8 seconds, and that's not the sort of look I'm going for. So what I'm going to do is, keeping the aperture as it is, I'm just going to rank up the ISO until I get a shutter speed of about 3 seconds or so, because I think that the shorter shutter speed, I think right now, will actually work better. So, also got a grad on as well. Don't often use grads, but I'm starting to like an old comment that I heard Joe Cornish made once, that he loves to see. Don't get me wrong, you know, digital blending has come on so much now and you can do some fantastic things, but his comment was he actually loves to see the image in the field. And of course, until they bring out live sort of computational photography and cameras with sort of HDR, which by the way won't be too long right in the corner, the only way to do that is by using a grad. So we've got a 3-stop soft edge grad on as well. So let's whack up the ISO and see whether that makes any difference to the look and feel of the image. So, still on this scene, a little portrait orientation, and the ambient light is now coming up, which is allowing me to keep a lower shutter speed without having to raise the ISO. What I quite like about it as well is there's a, bear with me here, because in my mind I'm talking about how I see the composition, but sometimes when I'm hearing other photographers talk about the composition, I'm not seeing it like that. And I think we all do see images slightly differently, and so you may not see exactly what I'm seeing here, but on the bottom left hand side there's obviously a bit of a fissure, a bit of a crack in the rocks, and that's kind of almost giving me a little bit of a bent out sort of towards the right middle of the image. And then obviously if I catch it right, I can actually get a little bit of movement in the waves before that clump of rocks out in the sea. And then what I really like about the horizon is I love clouds sort of disappearing up into the sort of top of the frame, and that's certainly what was going on here. We're starting to lose it a little bit, but what we do have is some lovely clouds all the way along, a little bit of separation as well. So now the light over in the Donegal Hills is stunning, including a bit of a snow-capped mountain. I don't think it's Errigal. I don't think I can see Errigal for here. It must be one of the other high peaks over there. But at some point in the next probably 10-15 minutes we're going to get a bit of direct light down here. Now that can help and hinder us at the same time depending on how harsh it is, but and out in the distance you've heard me talk about these guys before, Isla and Jura, the Paps of Jura, again with some snow on them. Beautiful. Oh wow, even a plane in the sky. I don't see those that often these days. Right, these foreground rocks are really starting to take on some of that early morning glow, so we'll carry on shooting. 4-stop ND, polarizer, 3-stop soft edge grad. Job done. Alright, so I've moved myself along probably about 4 or 5 footsteps, and what I might do now is I've actually found a little sort of composition that I quite like. There's a little sort of curved stone in the foreground, which then leads to a little sort of gap, a little natural gap, a little V shape, which again is hopefully pointing your eye, especially if we can get some correct movement in the waves. Now I think I'm going to now hold on to this composition, because I'm hoping that in the not too distant future we're going to get a little bit of direct light. Now, I'm going to surmise that the flats behind us here aren't necessarily going to give us any direct light on these foreground rocks, but we might get a little bit more light on the rocks in the sea. And again, as that ambient light increases, our shutter speed will decrease. I still think 1.5–2 seconds is probably optimal at the moment. Without mucking about with the ISO, I'm getting about a 5 second, which I think is just a little bit too long, but and hopefully, fingers crossed, the clouds stay there as well. So I don't think we're going to get any light. It looks like we're battling not only obviously the flats, and the sun kind of behind the flats, but also there has been some cloud moving along, which is sort of subduing the light somewhat. And the clouds are on the horizon. You can't really make those out, but they're starting to get a little more washed out. But I like this composition, and this is certainly something that I'd come back to later in the year when the sun kind of breaks over the horizon, sort of maybe above the houses, giving me more of a chance of getting some light on the rocks before it gets a little bit too harsh. But it's definitely one of the reasons why I love shooting local, being able to just sort of make that conscious decision that this isn't going to work this morning. Perhaps in the future. I did, however, see my first curlew of the year. Really nice, and I think it was a seal out bobbing in there, and also 2 ladies jumped in the water as well. Right guys, I think it's coffee time, and also, as well as starting these daily vlogs, I've also decided for my sins to try the keto diet, the whole no carb, low carb thing. Went to eat a pear this morning, realised it would have consumed all of my carbs. So basically I'm going to home to stick a chicken in the oven or something. Right. Once again guys, thanks a lot for following along, and I'll catch up tomorrow. Bye bye.